There are almost 100 star powers in the game, and I'm going to be ranking them from worst to best. Let's start with the F tier star powers. In my opinion, the worst star power in the game is Belle's grounded star power. Since Belle is a long-range brawler, any brawler marked by her super can usually just take cover until the effects of it will wear off. Also, it does not make a very big difference if the enemy has not used any shots and doesn't need to reload for 3 seconds. I've tried using this star power, and I just don't see the benefit from using it very often. A very close second to worst star power is Byron's Malaise. This star power requires his super, and although its effect lasts for 9 seconds, which is actually pretty awesome, it doesn't get much value because Byron's super is best used either to heal himself or to finish off weak brawlers. Any star power that involves a brawler's super needs a much stronger effect than these 2 star powers offer. Next up in the F tier is Nani's Tempered Steel. The only thing this star power is really useful for is tanking damage from a siege bot or an Ike turret. Anywhere else, and you can pretty much just fall back to use Nani's super in a safe place. Next is Squeak star power, Super Sticky. Slowing your opponents down for 4 seconds is actually a really good ability. The real problem with this star power is that it relies on Squeak's super, which is actually really easy to avoid, so this star power is not going to do a lot for you most of the time. Next is Surge's to the max star power. For the most part, this star power is hard to use and it isn't really very strong even when it is being used. His other star power is useless in solo showdown, so at least this one gets used in one game mode. Halfway through the F tier is Griff's Business Resilience. Now I'm going to be honest, it was a little bit difficult to place Griff's star power on this tier list since I made this video before he was actually released. But at first glance, it doesn't seem like a very good star power since the absolute maximum health that you can recover is 333 health. And since this triggers every 2 seconds, it helps, but it doesn't seem like it's going to allow Griff to play any differently than he would without it. Next is B's Honeycomb. Even though B has very little health, a 20% shield is nice to have, but the shield is only going to be there while B has her supercharged shot, which is something she does not have over half of the time. Even when she does have her supercharged attack, it's usually better to just use it instead of hang on to it so you can tank a little bit more extra damage. Next is Jean's Spirit Slap. If you have Jean's super, it's better to just use it most of the time instead of get additional damage. Additionally, the star power is really only good in close range combat, which most of the time Jean's not going to be in unless he actually just barely used his super. So this star power just doesn't complement his playstyle. Next up is Rosa's Thorny Gloves. This star power actually adds some significant extra damage, but only while Rosa is using her super, which isn't very long. And on top of that, Rosa just doesn't really need this star power since almost every brawler she gets in range of will usually die whether she has a star power or not. Next is Mortis's Creepy Harvest. Mortis can already heal quite a bit with a good super, and if he defeats the brawler he's attacking, he usually doesn't need to heal anymore. This star power isn't awful, but there's almost no reason to use it because Coiled Snake just makes him so much better. At the very top of the F tier, we have Penny's Last Blast. This star power only triggers if Penny's cannon gets blown up, which if that happens, it's already not that great. The cannonballs that are launched are also really easy to dodge if you actually are paying attention. However, if they are not avoided, they can deal tons of damage very quickly, especially against a stationary target like a safe or an Ike turret. Next are the C tier star powers, which aren't the best, but they do have their uses. The first star power in the C tier is Frank's Power Grab. The sheer damage that Frank deals while using this ability is insane and is enough to get it into the C tier, but it only lasts for a short while and it isn't really necessary since Frank already deals plenty of damage without it. Next in the C tier is Squeak's Chain Reaction. Squeak's main attack damage is automatically increased even for hitting a single brawler with this star power, but in order to put this star power to really good use, it requires the enemy to remain grouped together while Squeak's bombs explode, which doesn't happen very often, especially against experienced players. Next up is Carl's Protective Pirouette. For how short the duration of this shield is and how rarely it's used per match, I think the shield could be a little bit stronger. Even so, it does help Carl use his super more offensively and escape close range brawlers more easily. Next is Carl's second star power, Power Throw. Carl's main attack speed increases only slightly, but it helps him control areas more efficiently and deal more damage overall. Both star powers are decent abilities, but you'll use Power Throw a lot more than Protective Pirouette throughout an entire match. Next, we have Gale's Blustery Blow. I think this star power has the potential to be in a higher tier, but because it only stuns enemies against the wall for 1 second, it isn't that good. It's only useful on maps with lots of walls, but stunning an enemy for any amount of time definitely deserve a spot at least above the F tier. Next, we have Jesse's Shocky. This star power can be really useful in heist because it disables enemies from body blocking the safe, but in any other setting, the shots that bounce off the target are very easy to avoid and often don't help much in a professional match. Next is Edgar's Hard Landing. 1000 damage can can be a nice head start for Edgar in 1v1 situations. It can also be used to instantly defeat brawlers that have less than 1000 health, but since Edgar is a very strong close range brawler, this ability isn't actually super important. Only very slightly better is Edgar's second star power, Fisticuffs. Fisticuffs helps Edgar win 1v1s as well, but in a different way. It's particularly good to have if Edgar is attacking more than one target at the same time, but other than that, it gives a very similar advantage to his first star power. Halfway through the C tier is Leon's Smoke Trails. A boost in speed makes dodging, escaping, and approaching much easier, but Leon only has this boost for a few seconds and he can't even attack while he has it or it instantly goes away. For the next two star powers, we have Daryl's Rolling Reload and his Steel Hoops. Rolling Reload is nice to have in a game modes like Heist or Siege where you need to deal as much damage as quickly as possible. But Steel Hoops is a little more useful in every other situation, but the shield only lasts for 1 second, which is why both Daryl's star powers are in the C tier. Next up is Pam's Mama's Hug. The amount of healing that comes from this ability is not very much, but quite consistent since Pam shoots so many projectiles. It's really only worth it if your teammates stay within its range and if Pam is dealing plenty of damage. Next is Shelly's Band-Aid. Shelly recovers a lot of health instantly with this ability. It often gives her enough health to win a 1v1 situation that she might not have won without it. However, you can't really control when Shelly gets the health boost, and it can only be used every 15 seconds, which is a very long time. Next is Stu's Zero Drag. I would have placed the star power much higher if Stu's super could still knock brawlers back, but now it really only makes Stu harder to hit and makes his flame trail a little bit longer. It's still useful in some game modes where mobility is really important, but it's not nearly as useful as it used to be. The third best star power in the C tier is Lou's Hypothermia. Hypothermia is a very good ability, but it is very dependent on how many shots Lou is hitting throughout the game, so it's actually a pretty tough star power to use. Plus, its effect gets refreshed when the brawler is no longer frozen. I personally think that once Lou's Cryo Syrup gadget is released, we'll be seeing more of this star power. Next is Buzz's Tougher Torpedo. This star power obviously helps Buzz defeat enemies safely, but it also helps him chain his super against brawlers that aren't defeated after being stunned only once. However, the difference between half a second and 1 second is nothing really crazy. The last star power and the best star power in the C tier is Dynamike's Dynajump. Now, Dynajump is actually very useful in many situations, but it's probably the hardest star power to use in the entire game. It's mainly used for avoiding attacks and moving around the map, but unless you master it, it's not going to do a whole lot for you. Next is the B tier, which is full of star powers that aren't really the best, but are still frequently useful. The first in our largest tier is Pam's Mama's Squeeze. Pam's super deals 800 damage per second for each enemy inside its range, which honestly justifies her using her super strictly for area control in certain situations. Second in the B tier is Bo's Circling Eagle. Obviously, the star power is only good for maps with lots of bushes, but there are a few maps where it's not only just good, but a must-have star power because of how big of an advantage it gives. Next, we have Poco's Screeching Solo. 800 damage isn't a ton of damage, but Poco's super has a very long range and goes through walls, so it's good at preventing enemies from healing and cleaning up brawlers that have low HP. After Screeching Solo, we have Amber's Scorchin' Siphon. 50% additional reload speed for Amber makes her seem like her flames have no end, but sometimes it can be hard to stay on her oil puddle and make sure you don't accidentally light it on fire at the wrong time. Next is Lou's super cool star power. Lou's super is already very good even without the star power, but if an enemy gets frozen up inside of this ice puddle, it is extremely to hit and defeat them. Next is Shelly's Shell Shock. Slowing enemies down makes them much easier to hit, and particularly for close range brawlers like Shelly, it's easier to move closer to them, which is what makes this star power useful for her. Still toward the bottom of the B tier, we have Griff's Keep the Change star power. Griff has the potential to deal massive damage with his main attack, but it can be a little difficult to hit an enemy with all of his coins. Keep the Change helps a lot by keeping the projectiles close to each other, as well as allowing Griff to reload his attacks just very slightly faster. Next, we have Nita's Hyper Bear. This is obviously the go-to star power for Heist, since Nita's bear can tear apart a safe incredibly fast. And if Nita can use her Bear Paws gadget to stun the enemy brawler, they're gonna take a lot of damage from this as well. Next up in the B tier is Frank's Sponge. Frank already has the most health in the game without Sponge, so adding even more health to his max health makes him very difficult to take down. This is another star power that you will always get good use out of because it's a permanent stat boost. After Sponge, we have B's Insta B Load. With this star power, you can take riskier shots with B's supercharged shot, since it takes 2 misses to get rid of it. B becomes a lot more consistent, and this is usually used many times throughout a match. Next is Tick's Automatic Reload. A constant 7% increase in reload speed isn't that much, but with a brawler like Tick, it can make him much much more of a pest. It's also very useful when you're facing another tick because you'll be able to push him back by shooting more shots over the duration of a match. Next, we have both of Colt's star powers, Slick Boots and Magnum Special. Now, Colt is significantly harder to hit with Slick Boots equipped, and he can cover a slightly wider range with his main attack and his super since he's moving faster. Magnum Special makes Colt's bullets more likely to hit a target though, since they're traveling faster and they increase in range, which makes a huge difference depending on who his opponents are. Next are both of Mr. P's star powers. Revolving Door spawns his porters so much faster that it's almost like you have another teammate with you. With his star power equipped, there's basically a porter on the battlefield at all times. Handle with care adds significant range to Mr. P's main attack, which helps him fight at a safer distance and charges his super a lot easier. Next are both of Bull's star powers. Berserker can be good if you can stay alive while under 60% health. Bull's damage per second basically doubles while it's active, but he's obviously much more likely to be defeated with low health. Tough Guy, on the other hand, is a much safer star power to use and usually makes Bull an all-around bigger problem just because he can tank so much damage and survive for so long. Halfway through the B tier is 8-Bit's Boosted Booster. The radius increase makes 8-Bit's super much more likely to be used by him and his teammates, and it also increases the damage boost, which can honestly get kind of outrageous when the whole team of 3 is inside it. Our next pair of star powers are El Primos. El Fuego deals a good amount of extra damage over time, which makes him really good for defeating brawlers that don't have a lot of health, and Meteor Rush makes it a lot easier for El Primo to chain supers since he can catch up to an enemy that he hits with his super after defeating them with his main attack rather than letting them burn out by fire. Next are Jackie's star powers. Hardy Hard Hat isn't a very powerful shield, but since it's permanently equipped, it is always useful and makes Jackie much harder to defeat. Counter Crush can't do very much damage against long-range brawlers, but it absolutely shreds through brawlers that deal tons of damage up close and can make a big difference. Next, we have Byron's Injection. Whether you're healing multiple targets, dealing damage to multiple targets, or both, this star power makes Byron's main attack very powerful. It takes a pretty good aim to get the most out of it, but the injection shot charges frequently throughout a match, so you'll have plenty of chances to make them count. Next are Brock's Rocket number 4 and Incendiary. Rocket number 4 only makes a difference if Brock reloads all the way up to his 4th rocket. That being said, each of Brock's shots deal a lot of damage, so a 4th rocket actually enables him to defeat a lot more brawlers by unloading all 4 rockets. Incendiary, on the other hand, deals tons of damage to a safe or an Ike turret, and it also helps with map control since it creates several little areas that the enemy has to avoid. Next is Penny's Balls of Fire. Penny's cannon already helps a lot with map control, and with each cannonball creating a circle of fire wherever they land, the cannon can almost control the map by itself. Next, we have Nita's Bear With Me. This star power actually takes some serious strategy to use effectively, but it can help Nita and her bear survive for much longer, and usually it leads to charging up another bear for when the enemy finally takes down the first one. Next is Sprout's Overgrowth. This is another star power that charges frequently throughout the match, and the added range of the charge shot makes it much easier for it to hit its targets. Next is Spike's Fertilize. In order for this star power to be used effectively, Spike has to throw his super close to him, which means that he rarely is able to deal damage and heal with a single super. When you can do that, it's awesome, and it also makes Spike very hard to defeat while inside, and can quickly bring him back to max HP when Spike needs it. Moving toward the top of the B tier, we have Dynamite's Demolition. Aside from 1,000 extra damage being a lot for any brawler to take, it allows Dynamite's super to take out several brawlers with a single super, which is why this is a great star power. The third best star power in the B tier is Rico's Super Bouncy. This star power adds a ton of potential damage to Rico's main attack. It's a very good choice for heists and maps that have small choke points that make it really easy for Rico to hit targets off of walls. However, it does require a bit of skill to use. The second best star power in the B tier is Max's Run and Gun. This is a good star power for Max because her super lets her cover more ground, and Max has 4 shots instead of 3, so reloading quickly is actually really useful for her. At the very top of the B tier, we have Crow's Carrion Crow. Now, while this star power is equipped, any opponent whose health is below half has to stay far away from Crow because of how fast he can defeat them. This ability also applies to the Ike turret, the Siege bot, pets, and almost anything else that brawlers can spawn. Up next, we have the A tier star powers, which are some of the best abilities in the game and are only overshadowed by the S tier star powers. Starting off the A tier is Crow's Extra Toxic. Extra Toxic is very good for Crow's style of play because you get the effects of it without having to get too close to enemies. It's not very hard to use, and 25% of damage reduction is a ton, especially if you can keep the entire enemy team poisoned. Next is Max's Supercharged. The only reason that this star power is so good is because Max's super is so good. You'll pretty much always be moving with Max, so getting an extra super or 2 in the match just from running around is really useful. Next, we have both of BB's star powers. Batting stance makes it much easier for BB to get close to enemies since she can tank a lot more damage. Home run helps in a similar way, but it makes BB more evasive so she can get closer to enemies by dodging them. BB already has a lot of health and is faster than most brawlers, so adding even more of those stats makes both of these star powers a great choice, and whichever you choose most of the time comes to personal preference. Next are both of Colonel Ruff's star powers. With air superiority equipped, there are a lot of maps and situations where breaking walls can change the game, and 1000 extra damage makes it much easier to finish off weaker brawlers, which is why this star power is so good. Field promotion is a very team-based star power since it only boosts your teammates' health, but it's permanent. So if this star power gets used right, it can make your teammates nearly impossible to defeat. Next, we have Terra's Black Portal. Terra's clone is faster than every brawler in the game and actually deals a decent amount of damage. It can also help defeat brawlers that are hit by Terra's super a lot quicker. Even if it does not deal any damage at all, it will waste enemy ammo, which is great. Next is Buzz's Eyes Sharp star power. Buzz is a very good brawler, but only if he can get his super, so this star power pretty much guarantees that he'll be charging a lot faster since it increases the automatic charging radius. There are many maps that let Buzz safely charge a super in places that he can't without this star power. Also in the A tier is Sprout's Photosynthesis. Sprout shields for 30% whenever it is in bushes, but what is even crazier is that the shield lasts for 3 more seconds after Sprout exits the bush. This makes Sprout way more difficult to kill, especially on certain maps with lots of bushes. Next are both of Piper's star powers. Snappy sniping requires Piper to hit her shots, so it takes some good aim to use this star power, but this is a great star power to use on maps without bushes. On the flip side, ambush is obviously only good on maps that have lots of bushes, and the additional damage when Piper is standing in a bush means a maxed ranged attack can deal almost 3000 total damage. Next up is Poco's Da Capo. The more tanky your teammates are, the more you're going to get out of this ability. Since Poco's main attack pierces, you can heal teammates and deal damage to enemies all in the same shot, which is why this can be so strong. Next are both of Emz's star powers. Bad Karma can take out even the tankiest brawlers really quickly if all of these shots hit them. The extra damage is also very useful for destroying the safe, the Ike turret, or a siege bot. On the flip side, we've got Hype that can really turn things around for Ems in the middle of combat, especially if you catch multiple enemies inside her super. Since her super slows enemies down, it's pretty easy to keep enemies inside her range, so she can heal a lot even if the enemy's on the other side of a wall. Halfway through the A tier, we have Belle's Positive Feedback star power. Belle has a lot of range and a fast projectile speed, so it's not very difficult to activate this shield, which lasts for 3 seconds, and if she hits multiple targets, then that duration actually gets reset, plus it resets whenever her shot bounces between enemies. Next is Jessie's Energize. With this star power, Jessie can heal over half of her turret's health with 3 shots, which will require opponents to use a lot of ammo to destroy it. Her attack also bounces off of her turret, so it can be used to deal damage to enemy targets, or even give her just a little bit of extra range. Next is Bo's Snare Bear star power. Bo's mines are very easy to avoid if you know where they are, but if you do get hit by them, you will get stunned for 2 seconds by this star power, which can pretty much guarantee that you're gonna die. Next are both of Sandy's star powers, Healing Winds and Rude Sands. Now both of these are really great, and what you use will probably come down to the map and your own personal preference. Healing Winds is great for your team, but Rude Sands will keep the enemy team from healing up, which is sometimes more useful. Next we have both of Barley's star powers. Extra Noxious is usually the best choice for game modes like Heist and Siege because of how much damage it adds to Barley's main attack. It's also preferred when facing against tanks. Pretty much everywhere else though, medical use is preferred because the healing that it gives is so useful. Either way though, you can't go wrong with either of these star powers. Next is Amber's Wild Flames. This star power makes Amber incredibly good at area control since 2 oil puddles covers a good amount of ground, and it also helps her recharge her super much faster so that she has another oil puddle ready to go once she has to light one on fire. Next is Surge's Serve Ice Cold. Surge's hardest upgrade is his first one, and being able to skip it after every death can be incredibly helpful for Surge since he's one of the strongest brawlers in the game when properly upgraded. Next is Rosa's Plant Life. Rosa has a lot of health and already likes to stay hidden in bushes, so this is a great star power. This pairs very well with her shield as well. Moving toward the top of the A tier, we have Mortis's Coiled Snake. Mortis becomes so much easier to use with this star power. He can easily close the gap between him and targets that are far away, and if fully charged up, he can cover a lot of distance with this. Next, we have both of Colette's star powers. Push It can move brawlers a very far distance since Colette's super has a lot of range. It also affects enemies as if they were knocked back or pulled, so it interrupts a ton of things that brawlers do. On the other hand, Max Tax provides a decent shield even if Colette doesn't hit enemy brawlers with her super. And in 3v3 game modes, she has the potential to get a 50% shield for 5 seconds, which is just insane. The second best star power in the A tier is 8-Bit's Plugged In. 8-Bit would be the best brawler in the game if he wasn't so slow, and this star power helps him overcome that weakness, which makes him one of the best brawlers in the game in a small area. At the very top of the A tier is Nani's autofocus. Nani's super already deals a lot of damage. Even after its nerf though, autofocus allows Nani to one-shot kill a lot of brawlers, which is exactly why this star power can be so useful, especially in Bounty where Nani is typically played the most. Finally, we have the S tier star powers, which are the best of the best. These are either incredibly versatile or do such a great job at covering weaknesses that they really cannot be ignored. First in the S tier is Spike's Curveball. Spike's main attack has a very good range, but the pattern of his spikes can be predictable and therefore easy to dodge. With Curveball equipped, it becomes so much harder to predict where the spikes are going, and it actually increases the area that his attacks cover, which is why this is such a great star power. Next in the S tier is Rico's Robo Retreat. A 34% speed boost that can potentially last forever is just insane. Rico becomes so fast and evasive in a lot of cases that it doesn't even matter that his health is below 40% because nobody can actually land a shot on him. We've discussed a lot about the amazing benefits that come with speed boosts, but this one is certainly the best. After Robo Retreat, we have Tick's Well Oiled. Tick begins to heal in half the time it takes for a regular brawler to start healing, which means that unless he's constantly taking damage or firing shots, he's healing. This makes Tick's almost unkillable unless you deal a lot of damage to him all at once. Next is Jean's Magic Puffs. Jean is an incredible support with this star power. The ability has decent range, and any teammate within that range is extremely hard to kill. The fact that both of Jean's teammates can benefit from this at the same time and for as long as they need definitely makes it an S tier star power. Halfway through the S tier is Stu's Gasso Heal. Whether Stu's trying to close the gap between him and an enemy, dodge attacks, or make an escape using his super, this ability helps a ton. Stu can potentially heal himself 1,500 HP in less than 2 seconds while dodging and attacking at the same time. And a skilled Stu player that's hitting their shots will be almost impossible to kill because of this star power. Next is the third best star power in the game in my opinion, and that is Terra's Healing Shade. Unless the shade from Terra's super is defeated, it will give constant healing to the whole team for the entire match. Since it follows you and your teammates around, sometimes you can lead the shade to a safe location, and if you can protect it, it is going to cause serious problems for the opponents. The second best star power in the game is Leon's Invisi-Heal. 1,000 health every second is just so much health in so little time that it is one of the best star powers in the game, even if Leon himself isn't that amazing right now. There are some brawlers that have no way of defeating Leon while this star power is activated, unless they have help from a teammate, which is exactly why I'm putting this at number 2. And finally, the best star power in the game goes to Gale's Freezing Snow. Some brawlers can slow enemies down with their supers or their gadgets, but Gale is the only brawler that can slow enemies down every single time he hits them with his main attack. His attack is very wide and has a long range, which makes it really easy to slow enemies. And if Gale unloads all 3 of his shots, that's up to 1.5 seconds of slow time, which is usually plenty of time to put the enemy opponent in a position they do not want to be in. And that is every star power in the game from worst to best. Please don't roast me in the comment section, I did my best. And because you stuck around to the end of the video, here is an image with every star power ranked in their various tiers. If you want to share this, I ask that you please share my video instead of just posting the screenshot like this. I also ask that you don't timestamp this in the comment section or it will hurt my video's performance. I work really hard on my videos and I wanted to make this like a little bit of a reward for my viewers that made it to the end. So thank you for watching the whole video and making it to the end. If you'd like to see every gadget ranked from worst to best, you can watch this video right here. If you're not subscribed, click on this button and don't forget to use code Kairos in the Brawl Stars shop. For now, this is KairosTime ticking by and we will see you in Brawl Stars.